All right, good afternoon. After you're done with me, we will be joined by Imran Riza, who, as you know, is the resident coordinator and humanitarian coordinator for Lebanon. And he will speak to you about the humanitarian situation in Lebanon. As you know, the Secretary General is on his way to the Pacific Islands on the trip that we've told you about for the last couple of days. Later today, in a few hours, he's expected to arrive in Samoa, where he will stay until the 23rd of August. He will meet with the Prime Minister of Samoa and others and visit communities impacted by climate change. Our Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed is in Egypt, where she met today with the President of Egypt, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The Deputy Secretary General discussed Egypt's pivotal role in the region amidst complex challenges. She thanked the President for his leadership regarding issues such as Sudan and Gaza and for accommodating over 9 million refugees in Egypt. They also discussed the country's climate adaptation project on the North Coast aimed at combating the effects of sea level rise. The Deputy Secretary General emphasized the need to leverage the Summit of the Future and the General Assembly's meeting in September to highlight issues related to sea level rise in coastal areas, as well as peace and security and international financial architecture. Turning to the situation in Gaza, our humanitarian colleagues at OCHA are warning that relentless hostilities and repeated evacuation orders continue to constrain aid operations that are already hampered by access constraints, fuel shortages, and other challenges. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that parts of the Salah ad-Din Road, a crucial passage for humanitarian missions, were included in the latest evacuation orders by the Israeli authorities over the weekend for parts of the Deir Bala governorate. This has made it nearly impossible for aid workers to move along this key route. The coastal road is not a viable alternative. Beaches along this route are now crowded with makeshift shelters for displaced people. As a result, convoy movements along the coastal road are extremely slow, and critical supplies and services such as water trucking are not reaching people in need at anywhere near the scale required. Back here this morning, Stephanie Corey, the Deputy Special Representative for the Secretary General for Political Affairs and acting head of the mission, briefed the Council on the situation in Libya. She warned that over the past 2 months, the situation in the country has deteriorated quite rapidly in terms of political, economic, and national stability. Security stability. Ms. Corey said the unilateral acts by Libyan political, military, and security actors have increased tensions, have further entrenched institutional and political divisions, and have complicated efforts for a negotiated political solution. In the midst of this, she said the UN mission, along with member states, have actively worked to de-escalate the current situation. Ms. Corey noted that local elections are moving forward and are expected to take place in mid-October 2024, adding that the High National Election Commission, with the support of the UN mission, is undertaking the necessary steps. Her full remarks are shared with you. And our special envoy for Myanmar, Julie Bishop, is in Beijing today and tomorrow to meet with the Foreign Minister of China, Wang Yi, as well as the Chinese Special Envoy for Asian Affairs, Deng Xijun. This comes as Ms. Bishop continues to focus on responding to the crisis in Myanmar through regional unity, international coherence, and a Myanmar-led inclusive process in the interest of people of Myanmar. The mission to China follows the special envoy's recent visit to New York headquarters in June, and then her regional tour of the her regional tour to ASEAN countries. The tour including engagements with the foreign ministers of Indonesia, the Lao People's Democratic Republic, Malaysia, and Thailand. Also during that tour, the special envoy met with the incoming ASEAN chair, and that is Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, and the current ASEAN special envoy to Myanmar, Alunkeo Kitikun. Turning to Bangladesh, I'd been getting some questions about a letter sent by the Secretary General. I can tell you that Mr. Guterres has written a congratulatory letter to Mohammed Yunus, the new chief advisor of the interim government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. In the letter, the Secretary General welcomes efforts to restore calm and organize parliamentary elections in Bangladesh. He says that it is his hope that the Yunus government, the Secretary General says it is his hope that the Yunus government will take an inclusive approach, including by considering the voices of young people as well as women, and also those of minority and indigenous communities. Mr. Guterres adds that he counts on the interim government of Bangladesh to ensure the full protection of all citizens, in particular of minorities. The Secretary General has also strongly urged Mr. Yunus to ensure the well-being of the Rohingya refugees, especially in view of the deteriorating situation in Myanmar. And turning to Ukraine, the humanitarian coordinator in Ukraine for the UN, Matthias Schmale, condemned an overnight attack in the Donetsk region in the eastern part of the country where a transit center for displaced people was damaged. The site in Pokrovsk town was sheltering people who had fled earlier hostilities. Mr. Schmal stressed that civilians and civilian infrastructure, including humanitarian facilities, are protected under international humanitarian law. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says that escalating hostilities in the Donetsk region continue to kill and injure civilians and drive displacement. Our humanitarian partners on the ground say that deadly strikes over the past week in Pokrovsk and the towns of Mirnorod and Toretsk have damaged homes and schools. Aid workers in Mirnorod responded by delivering emergency materials and providing psychosocial support to impacted people. Our humanitarian colleagues note that civilians, including humanitarian workers, are facing daily threats to their safety and hostilities in Ukraine. And our colleague from the peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo have updated us on ongoing efforts to protect civilians in the eastern part of the country. Recently, peacekeepers deployed to Guina in North Kivu in response to alerts about the Zaire armed group that surrounded the Congolese National Police office in the area. UN peacekeepers deterred the Zaire armed group fighters in close collaboration with the Congolese armed forces, prompting the Zaire fighters to withdraw. MONUSCO also deployed a patrol to the Kwe mining site near Bunia in Ituri province after elements from the Codeco armed group attempted to launch an attack. Meanwhile, the mission informs about the continued use of disinformation, misinformation, and hate speech, especially in the context of the M23 rebellion in North Kivu, which is threatening the social cohesion and security in the area. In response, MONUSCO recently organized a forum of about 100 local journalists and influencers, including in Goma, to promote responsible reporting that supports peace and stability in the region. Speaking of peace and stability, Edie.
Thank you, Steph. At the beginning, you talked about the difficulties in getting aid through because of the evacuation orders. Can we get some specific figures on what is getting through and how that compares with the past?
Yes, it's more than a valid question. We've asked our colleagues at OCHA for an update on kind of volumes, trucks, and all those kinds of data points.
Including fuel?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, secondly, since the Security Council discussed Libya today, can you give us an update on a replacement for the former SRSG, Mr. Bachelet?
I can give you an update, which is that the process is ongoing.
Last time before Mr. Bachelet took the job, it took a year. Are we expecting a similar wait now?
Well, listen, I think it's no secret that head of the UN mission in Libya is rather a challenging job. It takes the time that it takes to find the right candidate, that will go through the process through which any candidate to be SRSG, person to be SRSG, has to go through, which involves a lot of consultation. Deji, and then Benny.
What about another selection, the USG for humanitarian work? Is that also in progress?
So much is in progress.
It's been quite some time in progress.
It is. I know it's been some time in progress, but obviously the process is continuing, and as soon as we have something to share with you, we will. But it needs, I shouldn't need to remind, but I will, that Joyce Msuya is the acting and very engaged head of the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and the department is being led. It's not as if it had no leadership.
Another forgotten issue, maybe, the Yemen tanker. What do you have any update on the Yemen?
Nothing.
It's still there?
It's still there, and nothing.
Would that be also a risk? Because now we know the situation in Red Sea.
Of course it's a risk. Of course it's a risk. I mean, and we see the ongoing tensions in Yemen, and it puts a lot, there continues
but
to be.
But to place that tanker there, it's not according to what the schedule said by UNDP. I mean, if I remember correctly, last year. So what's going?
Well, the
what's
situation.
wrong?
I mean, as you very well know, the situation in and around Yemen, while has improved in some areas, in others it has not. Ben Yemen.
Regrettably, it won't be about progress. Some of us are not progressive.
Benny, I never mistook you for a progressive person. But let's not regress. Yes.
So I know there's going to be a briefing about the humanitarian situation in Lebanon. Regrettably, I can't make it because of previous. The question I have is, there are up to 80,000 Israelis who have been evacuated from their homes in northern Israel because of a war that started from Lebanon. My question is there a plan to have a briefing on that?
Well, let me be clear. I think, if I'm mistaken, I no doubt you will correct me, Benny. But every time I speak about the humanitarian situation along the Blue Line, make it a point to talk about the tens of thousands of people who've been displaced from the northern side of the Blue Line in Lebanon and from the southern side in Israel. Civilians are being impacted. They're being uprooted. A number of them have been killed. This is impacting civilians on both sides of the Blue Line. We have a humanitarian operation in Lebanon. We do not have one in Israel. Should the Israeli government request humanitarian assistance from the UN, as would any other government request it, we would be happy to provide it. But we are fully aware of the humanitarian impact on the Israeli end as well as on the Lebanese end.
And when you say this, you mean the war that was started on October 8 by Hezbollah?
The situation along the Blue Line, the non-implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701 has been going on for quite some time. Yes, sir, go ahead, Alex.
Thank you so much, Stéphane. I'm wondering if you have any updates on Kursk region in Russia.
No update. We're continuing, obviously continuing to follow the situation with concern, including the impact on civilians living in the area.
Can I have one more?
Yes, of course.
Yesterday you said that Houthis returned the office in Sana'a, but originally in early August they also seized vehicles. So what happened to the vehicles?
I don't think the vehicles have been returned, but I will double check. Okay. Yes, Vladimir.
The same subject, I think. We see that the Russian crisis is growing as the war has returned home to Russia. Russia has demanded UN condemnation of Ukraine, but doesn't allow UN representatives into Kursk region. The Russian foreign minister called the request of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to visit the region another performance. Someone, Maria Zakharova, claims that the High Commissioner ignores Russia's complaints about Ukraine. What's your opinion about that?
Look, I can't speak fully for the High Commissioner for Refugees, but I can tell you, and I have no doubt, that his office engages with all member states that requires attention. Let me go to the screen first. Mushfiq?
You for the Secretary General for the letter you just mentioned and offering support during this critical period as the country moves towards stability. Has the Secretary General also called for justice for those responsible for the deaths of 819 people and the injury of 25,000 others, mostly from gunshot wounds under the shoot-on site orders by dictator Hasina?
Yes, we have
As
been
reported by Human Rights Support
Mushfiq,
Society.
we've been speaking about accountability since the beginning of this particular crisis. There will need to be accountability for the violence, for the loss of life, and for all violations of human and political rights. Deji.
Thank you.
Quick question also on Kursk region. Does the Secretary General feel disappointed that the multiple Russian officials says there would be no peace talk if the offensive continues in Kursk?
Look, what we want to see is an end to this conflict that has gone on for far too long, in line with General Assembly resolutions, with the territorial integrity of Ukraine and international law.
Question on Venezuela. Did the UN say anything about the results of the July 28th?
Yes, there was. I think both you and I were on leave last week, but I would encourage both of us to read the transcript from last week.
But my question
Yeah.
does the UN support Maduro's declaration that he won the election?
It's not for us to support a claim to winning or not winning an election. I would refer you back to what we said when the results came in. Okay, thank you.